This is a video that went viral from the average Florida man on TikTok. He is a veteran who was having a lot of struggles with continuity of mental health care. Switching therapists time after time after time, as you can imagine, can be very, very difficult because it forces people to relive the same traumas that they try to process in therapy in the first place. So a lot of times if you're forced to switch providers, you end up having to relive and rehash a lot of the stuff that you've already, hopefully, started to work through. So this is a tough video to watch, but I think it's a very important one. Let's give this a go.
7 times over the course of the last 6 years, dude. The VA has continued to let me down. I just want some continuity of care with mental health providers. These doctors keep quitting, they keep switching. And then the one doctor that I really liked, who talked me off of ledge the last time, refused. I had a split because they fell in a network, and then they came back in a network. So I went the last 2 years dealing with my own demons myself and trying to hold it together. And then come to find out, it's like May. It's like late May, and he denied taking my case back. April 12th, and I'm just finding out, dude. And now I gotta go back to some new doctor, and then I gotta open Pandora's box again because they're gonna want to know everything, and then I'm gonna have to live through work and do that for a month. I just want some continuity of care, dude. I'm fucking so tired of it. I just want to be able to talk to the same person and have the same individual manage my goddamn meds. I've been off all my medications for 2 years. I've been doing it on my own, man. I'm just white knuckling. I'm gripping. Jesus, I'm so tired of it. It's not a lot to ask. I just want to be able to talk to the same person and not continue to have to retell these fucking stories that torment me. I fucking get it now. I really do. I just want some continuity of fucking care.
Yeah, notice, I mean, he cut the video there when he said, "I really get it now," and then it cuts, the frame cuts. I wonder what he talked about in the interim that he decided not to include in that video. You saw a little edit there. Obviously a very, very difficult video to watch. A lot of things jump out at me about that. I worked as a tour guide in New York City for a long time. And when I first got started working as a tour guide in New York City, the first gig I got was actually from upstate New York, going from a KOA campground into Manhattan. So you would meet a lot of retired RVers, and a lot of retired RVers are veterans, and a lot of them are disabled veterans. And you would see guys, you know, with the Vietnam veteran hat on, who would get wheeled around on oxygen tanks, and just people with all kinds of physical scars from their time in the service, not to mention some of the mental scars that I'm sure I cannot see as a tour guide who just spends a day with them showing them the sights. But one of the things that always struck me about them is just how humble they are. There is a humility about the American people. There is a humility about veterans. And, you know, it's not often that you hear a channel called DueDissidence heap a lot of praise on America, right? Because we tend to be very critical of America. And of course we are unapologetically. But what this video is a good reminder of is that at the end of the day, you know, Americans are ordinary people, just like everybody else. And the fact that he says, you know, is it too much to ask for continuity of care? Continuity of care, something as simple as that, something as simple as not having these sort of administrative lapses in providership and red tape to go through, and having to, you know, restart therapy over and over again with different people, not having your story and your files passed along properly so that you don't have to get into everything a second, third, fourth, and fifth time. You know, you just see how much people give and how little they expect. I mean, that's the thing that always struck me about vets that I've met, you know, is how little they expect in return for making the ultimate sacrifice, whatever you think of the sacrifice. Obviously, anti-war commie that I am, I don't think many of their sacrifices end up being worth it at all. I'm not afraid to say most of these people do die in vain. Most of them are injured in vain. Most of them do suffer these mental scars in vain. This guy obviously did some things that haunt him. For what? For what? For what? Nobody can answer that. So I'm not defending that. But at the same time, you see a story like this, and yeah, I think the humility jumps out at you. At least it did at me.
Yeah. Watching this poor man having what's clearly, he's having a mental health crisis. And I'm not in any way comparing it. I've intimated this a couple times on the show. After I quit smoking, I went through a mental health crisis, and I was almost pretty much in the state you're seeing there. And again, I'm not comparing what I've gone through to what this man's gone through, but that makes it particularly painful for me to watch that. I somewhat understand that feeling of just, you can't even pull it together. And to do this to these poor people who were recruited into the military on a promise that their country is going to take care of them. And then to hear this, because that is very difficult. And I'm sure a lot of people in our audience have been to therapy, have had that experience. That's a lot to unpack all of those things with a therapist. And then from what he's describing, that one goes out of the network, and then another one comes in, and then this person has to dredge up this trauma all over again and try to work through it. Like, I can understand having been through a process like that, where I was lucky enough to have the same person for 4 years, what that would have been like to just have the person get yanked in 6 months and then have to go to somebody else and start explaining again what the problem is, and then have to go to somebody else after that. That's why when I go to places, in keeping with what you're saying, when I go to places like Arlington, honestly, and again, this is not a statement on the service members at all, it makes me sick, because they glorify death in the military to get you to join the military. That's how I read places like that. It's a recruitment ad for the military, when really, I'm not an absolute pacifist, but there are very few wars that don't really boil down to elites fighting over their money and resources, where in the end, no matter how the war resolves, the people who fought it are not going to reap the benefits even in victory. The people who started the war will. It's just, I grew up in the kind of neighborhood where a lot of people join the military. And that's another thing, they play on that tendency of a certain type of man to want to prove their maleness, to want to prove their macho. A lot of people in my neighborhood would join the Marines because that was the ultimate, to show how much of a man you were. And, they just play on that, and they chew these people up and spit them out. In a neighborhood like that, you also had people who were very traumatized Vietnam vets with PTSD. There was a guy in my neighborhood, you talk to him, he could be in the middle of a conversation with you, and he'd say, "You better get out of here, man. You're starting to change." If he said that, you needed to get away from him because he'd attack you. And then nonetheless, people would still join the service, right? So it's just terrible the way these people are propagandized, I feel, into a military that doesn't give a shit about them. And then once they don't need them anymore, they just throw them out like trash, really.
Yeah, certainly. Some good news at the end of this. He did post a follow-up to TikTok where he said he is starting to get some help, and he did get some eyes on his case, and so they're starting to work with him on that. So that is obviously a good sign, and shows that, social media can do some good, right? It can help you get a story out there and help sort of put pressure on people to, get their shit together and get this guy the help that he needs. So obviously best wishes for him.